Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Mia and I'm a professional pastry chef here in San Francisco. As you can see by the title right down below, I'm going to be doing a Q&A on just my career and what it's like to be a pastry chef. But before I jump into that, I'm sure everybody's watching has been on social media or seen the news and have seen the protests going on for the Black Lives Matter movement. And as somebody who's not a minority, I feel it's really important for everybody to spread the word and show their support in any way they can. So I'm going to leave some links in the description below. One will be just a quick link you can click on that will lead you to a bunch of resources on places you can donate and petitions you can sign. And then I'm going to leave a direct link to the Hands Up Act petition on change.org, which is basically just proposing a law to be passed that says if a person was killed by an officer, if they were found to be unarmed after the fact, then the officer will face 15 years in prison automatically. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit and show my support to everybody out there who's fighting for their right to live. I'm there for you. I've signed every petition that I've found. I've donated. I've done everything that I can in my power as somebody who's not a minority and somebody who's not being affected by this directly. It's really hard to try to find a way to help and show my support, and I'm doing my absolute best. So without any further ado, please take the time to check those links out and let's just get right into the video. So I asked on Reddit, actually. I did an AMA and I said, I'm a 22-year-old pastry chef in San Francisco, ask me anything food related or not. And then I did put in the description that I'll be using their questions in my YouTube video, but I also already answered them in text form on the actual Reddit thread. So the first question is, what is your favorite pastry? And everyone always asks me this question, and it's such a weird question to get when you are a chef. You try so many things, you eat so many things, and it's like, I don't know. So I said to eat, I love cheesecake. I love eating cheesecake. I don't honestly really have that big of a sweet tooth, which I think helps because I'm not constantly picking, but I love cheesecake because it's not super sweet. And then to make, I love decorating cakes. I don't do that full time. I work in a restaurant full time because I think I would get bored if that's the only thing I did every day, but I love decorating cakes and making them super pretty. And then since they said pastry, I didn't know if they were talking like desserts in general, or if they were talking like you would go to a bakery and get a pastry. So if we're talking like actual pastries, croissants are my favorite. So good. So the next person said, how much money do you make? Can you afford an apartment on your own? And then what's your best bread pudding recipe? So I actually don't have a bread pudding recipe on me right now because I left all my recipes at work. I didn't know that the restaurant was going to close for 4 months the last time I was there. So I don't have anything on me right now, so my apologies for anybody who was hoping for the recipe because I don't have one. And then for the how much money do you make? Can you afford an apartment on your own? So I think my situation's a little bit weird. I mean, I live in San Francisco where the minimum wage is over $15. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's like $15.65 or something like that. And then you look at starting position jobs in like Las Vegas and they're starting, pastry cooks are getting like $12 an hour. So it's definitely, I'm in a weird situation where even if I were to make the minimum wage, I'd be making significantly more than people in other cities. So I got started off as a pastry cook at $18 an hour. I was offered the job at $17 an hour, and then I got bumped up to $18 because there was just issues when I first started where I wasn't able to start for 3 weeks after my original intended start date, so I didn't have a job for 3 weeks with no fault of my own. So they gave me a $1 raise just to make up for it. So I got started at $18 an hour and I got promoted to $19 an hour a couple months after that. And then a couple more months after that, I got promoted to sous chef and I was put on salary. As for rent, my rent is crazy low for San Francisco. My rent is under $1,000, which is unheard of in San Francisco. It doesn't even make any sense. I do have a roommate, but I only have one roommate and that's also kind of like a strange thing in San Francisco. Most people who pay low rent have, you know, 3 or 4 roommates. So that definitely helped, was being able to find an apartment so cheap, which is super hard to do in San Francisco. I definitely lucked out. So I am able to afford my rent. An apartment on my own? No, because a one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco is over $3,000, which is more than half I make a month. So I'm not doing that. So the next person said, where did you go to school? And I did talk about this a little bit in my last video. I went to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. And then they said, any advice for someone about to go to pastry school? So I'm just going to read this because my answer was kind of long and I want to make sure I hit all the same points, but I might elaborate a little more as I'm like verbal. I said, in my experience, the people that did well were the ones who didn't get overly confident. Confidence is super important, but the ones who thought they were better than everyone else were often disliked by the chefs or got too in their heads trying to make everything perfect. Although this isn't good advice for school, my executive chef and I always joke that 90% of our jobs is covering up mistakes. If you stress about making everything absolutely perfect, it'll never happen. I struggle with that a lot. So for that tip, like I said, confidence is super important. There's a lot of things you have to do where it's like if you don't just bite the bullet and do it, whatever you're making is going to mess up. Like caramels, if you get scared for dumping the cream in because it bubbles up, like your caramel's going to burn. If you have to flip a cake over really fast, if you try to do it carefully, the cake will break. Things like that, like you just have to go really fast or really confidently and it'll show in your project. So when I was in school, I don't know if it's the same for all schools, but none of the chefs really liked if we tried to do our own thing. Like school is very cut and dry, like this is the assignment, this is exactly how you do it. So if you're trying to like impress the chef and be like, oh, I already know how to make a cake, so I'm going to do like rosettes on the cake that they told me to only do, you know, a shell border on, then they're going to be like, what the hell, like don't do that because that's not your assignment. So just very closely follow the exact assignments and don't try to impress anybody because trust me, these chefs have seen way more impressive stuff than any student in culinary school, and that's not a jab at students because we're learning, that's the whole point, and they've worked in the industry and they've seen some amazing things, and it's just basically teaching you how to follow directions because that's literally what baking is. Just don't obsess over trying to make things perfect because it'll never happen. If you keep going around a cake with your spatula trying to make it perfectly smooth, it's not gonna happen because frosting doesn't get 1000% smooth. It's always gonna have like, you're always gonna be able to see like a little bit of something, so just accept that it's not gonna be perfect and move on because that's just the better way to do it. You're gonna save time too. Sorry if the angle's slightly different, I was just editing and I noticed I lost a huge clip of footage, so I'm re-recording it, so yeah. So the next tip was to make sure to read recipes from start to finish before beginning your work. This is super important to know exactly what you're doing before you do it because a lot of the times recipes will be in weird order or you can do things at the same time. It could be telling you to mix one thing and bake something at the same exact time and you don't know that. Or for example, you could have to flip something over as soon as it comes out of the oven or add something to a pot as soon as it gets to a certain degree. You have to know what your next step is so you know that you're doing everything right, and that is super important to do. And they'll tell you that in school, but just a reminder to make sure you read everything through and through so you know what you're doing. And it's also a huge time saver because you can multitask. If you know that you have to cream butter and sugar and you know that you have to crack 12 eggs, have the butter and sugar creaming while you're cracking the 12 eggs. You know, it's just easy to do things like that. My next tip was clean as you go, and this is so important, and this will be told to you over and over and over again when you're in school or in life or in anything, just to clean as you go. When I look back at my first semester in my first class at culinary school, we had these workbenches and underneath had a little shelf, and every single person's shelf by the end of the class was just loaded with dirty dishes because nobody could figure out how to make the time to clean, and it was just so messy. And then by the time we graduated 2 years later, we had gotten it down to a science where like if something's in the oven for 10 minutes, take that 10 minutes and clean up your station. If something's in the mixer, use that time to wipe down your station. It's always so important to work clean because if you're working messy, chances are your product is also going to be messy and you're going to have crumbs on it or it's just not going to look the way it should. It's always so important to work clean. If you've ever watched those back-to-back videos of the chef on Bon Appetit and some like random celebrity and they do the back-to-back, if you watch the chef, you'll notice how they're always wiping down their cutting board. They're always consolidating containers and putting trash in their little trash receptacle. And then the amateur who doesn't know what they're doing, nothing against them because they don't know what they're doing, that's the whole point, but they always just leave stuff everywhere. And you'll notice that the chef ends up with this beautiful, beautiful product, and their station is gorgeous because they're just doing things while they go. And lastly, I said put colored duct tape on all of your personal tools because people in culinary school have sticky fingers, which is true. If somebody's knife goes missing and your knife is just sitting on the counter with no identification on it, they'll take it. They will. I don't know what it is, but everybody steals everybody's tools. I never did in culinary school. So get duct tape. Go to like Michael's or Hobby Lobby or a craft store where they have like the wall of different colored duct tape. Pick a pattern or a color that's unique to you and put it on all of your tools. I'll literally show you my knives. Hold on. Okay, these are 2 of my knives that they actually issued me at culinary school, and you'll see I have this blue, like almost kaleidoscope tape on the actual knife, on the handle, and on the knife guard. And this is my chef knife, though one of the handle fell off, but I have it on the knife guard still. So that way, if anybody were to be walking around with these knives, I know they're mine. And it's actually important just at work, too, because I've had a lot of tools. I have a lot of tools that the restaurant also owns. I have my own bench scraper and bowl scraper and rubber spatulas and things like that. So it's good to have tape on it so that way they don't get messed up with the tools that everybody's free to grab, because then it's going to end up in somebody else's toolbox. So tape your knives, claim your property. You can even engrave your knives. You can bring it to a place, or you can buy an engraver and put your initials or your name if it's short enough, because it takes a long time to engrave. So that way they really can't steal it because it's on there permanently. But I've had this tape on there since 2017. 3 years I've had this tape on here, so super important. Also, when you're washing your knives, make sure you get the handles and the sanitizer as well, because tape gets gross. So the next question was, when you go to a party where you must bring something, what do you usually bring? So that's actually a funny question, because being a chef, people kind of expect you to bring something cool if you're bringing something. You can't just show up with like a dozen chocolate chip cookies. Like, you can, but people will be like, oh, I thought you were gonna bring like a cake or something. Never do work for free unless you want to, and I stand by this. If you don't want to make a full cake for a party, don't do it unless somebody's paying you. I do that for fun because I enjoy bringing food places, but never work for free unless you want to, because this is your job. This isn't, you know, you're not giving food for free. It costs money, and it costs, you know, time to do these things. So anyway, last time I went to a party, I made a key lime tart. I put like buttercream and flowers on it. It was really pretty. And then the time before that, I brought like a layered cheesecake. But it's always something different. Just whatever I feel like making at the time. It's usually something seasonal too. I'm really big into seasonality. I love doing citrus in the winter, berries in the summer, strawberries in the late spring, things like that. So this question I actually did not answer online yet, so pretty exciting because I don't have any like preemptive answers for this. So in your personal experience, what is the best dessert you have tasted from any cafe or bakery? I can't speak on San Francisco because I haven't been to many places in San Francisco yet. But I am from Massachusetts, which means I have been to the North End in Boston many times. And if you're ever in the North End in Boston, you have to go to either Bova's or Modern Pastry and get a cannoli, because their cannolis are so good. Modern Pastry is directly across the street from Mike's, and Mike's always has a really long line. Modern does sometimes, but Bova's almost never, so definitely grab a cannoli if you're in the North End. Do you often cook for your family is the next question. I don't, because my family lives in Massachusetts and I live in California, and that's like 3,000 miles. So no, I don't cook for my family. Even when I'm home, I don't cook for them too often because both my parents are keto and my sister lives with her boyfriend, so I don't really cook for them. I don't cook at home for myself that often, because when you spend 10 hours a day in a kitchen and you get home and it's midnight, because that's when service ends, you don't really want to cook for yourself, so I kind of just boil pasta a lot or make like easy things. I don't really bake for myself because, like I said, I don't really have a sweet tooth. Yeah, I don't really cook for anybody at home. What do you think is the easiest dessert to make? Honestly, it sounds like it'd be really hard just because the name sounds fancy, but panna cottas are so easy to make and they're really good, and you can make them any flavor you want besides pineapple because gelatin doesn't work in pineapple, and ginger. Panna cottas are literally just boiled milk, sugar, any flavoring you want. It could be vanilla, it could be, I've made like strawberry, I've made cheesecake ones, and pretty much any flavoring you want, and then gelatin. And it's super easy, and you just boil the milk, sugar, and the flavor, and you just add the gelatin in, make sure the gelatin's melted, and then you pour it into cups or whatever you want to pour it into, and you put it in the fridge and wait till it's cool, and you're done. So this person said, do you use cups or scales? I'm from the UK and don't understand how using cups to measure works. So personally, I prefer weight measuring, aka ounces or grams, over cups. It's more accurate and it's faster. Instead of doing like 1, 2, 3, I can just be like, okay, a pound. You know what I mean? It's so much faster that way. So yeah, I prefer weight measuring. It's always so funny to see TikToks of people using USA recipes and they are from another country and they don't understand that cups are like a specific size. When you say 1 cup, it's not just like any old cup. Like I wouldn't fill this and call this a cup because an actual cup is about that. A cup is around 4 ounces of water if you wanted to go by weight. So it's kind of funny, but yeah, cups I don't really like because it takes a long time and they're not very accurate. So the last question was, what do you think about fondant? This is a funny question because I don't really work with cakes that much. I think fully wrapped cakes are kind of outdated. Most people are heading towards just buttercream now. But that being said, I think people who work with fondant every single day can do some crazy stuff with it and make really cool figurines and decorations and things like that. So it can be a really cool material to work with. I just don't use it that often. So that's it for today's video. If you have any other questions you want to know, leave them in the comments and I'd love to make another Q&A video. Leave any other videos you'd like to see in the comments. I really want to open this channel up to everybody who loves food and not just chefs specifically. I don't want to put myself into too small of a box. I'd really love to appeal to a larger audience of food lovers. So leave any video suggestions you have below. Make sure you check out those links in the description for the petitions and places you can donate and things like that. And I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.